Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over Week 10 college football rankings. So, going over last week's rankings and what those teams did in Week 9. Last week at number 10, I had Penn State. They beat Indiana by a score of 33-24. 9 was Alabama. They were on a bye. 8 was Texas. They easily beat BYU by a score of 35-6. 7 was Oregon. They also won by a score of 35-6 as they beat Utah. 6 was Oklahoma. They were upset by Kansas, losing 38-33. 5 was Ohio State. They beat Wisconsin 24-10. 4 was Florida State. They destroyed Wake Forest, winning 41-16. 3 was Washington. They beat Stanford by a score of 42-33. 2 was Michigan. They were on a bye. And 1, Georgia. They easily beat Florida by a score of 43-20. So this week's rankings coming in at number 10, I've got Ole Miss. They entered my rankings at number 10 after a 33-7 win over Vanderbilt, and also because Oklahoma drops out of the top 10 after a loss against Kansas. But Ole Miss was great against Vanderbilt. They ran the ball really well with 177 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. And their defense, which had been shaky all season long, was great, allowing just 229 yards and 3.5 yards per play, and also forcing 2 turnovers. But Ole Miss, they enter the top 10 after a win and an Oklahoma loss. Next week, they take on Texas A&M before a big matchup against Georgia the following week. Coming in at number 9, we've got Penn State. They should not be moving up, but I have to move them up one spot as a result of the Oklahoma loss. But Penn State played a bad game against Indiana. They won just 33-24, and they scored the game-winning touchdown with just a minute 24 left in the fourth quarter. It was not great for Penn State. Quarterback Drew Allar did have a bounce-back game with 3 touchdowns, but Penn State could not run the ball with just 3.1 yards per carry. And their defense, which had been great all season long, allowed a season-high 24 points and multiple big plays. And this is a defense that had been one of the nation's best coming into this week. But Penn State, another game that isn't great. I think 9 is too high. I think they're overrated, but I think they have to be at 9. And next week they take on Maryland. Coming in at number 8, we've got Alabama. They move up one spot, which is a direct result of the Oklahoma loss. They were on a bye. Next week they have a massive game when they host LSU. 7, we've got Texas. They move up one spot after a win and an Oklahoma loss. But Texas was great against BYU. They won 35-6 with their backup quarterback Malik Murphy. And Murphy was solid for Texas with 170 yards and 2 touchdowns. But it was a really good performance from the Texas run game and defense. They ran for 184 yards and 2 touchdowns on 5.3 yards a carry. And defensively, they were great, holding BYU to just 6 points and forcing 3 turnovers. Another good win for Texas. They check in at number 7. Coming in at number 6, we've got Oregon. They dominated Utah, winning 35-6, and it was a good win, dominating another good opponent on the road. And Oregon was great offensively and defensively. Offensively, Bo Nix had 3 total touchdowns, 2 passing, 1 rushing, and Oregon also ran the football extremely effectively with 142 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. And defensively, Oregon held Utah to just 3.6 yards per play. They couldn't run the ball or throw the ball, and they forced Utah into 2 turnovers. I think Oregon is the best one-loss team. They check in at number 6 after a dominant victory over Utah. Number 5 is Ohio State. They come in at number 5 after a 24-10 win over Wisconsin. They had a big game from running back Travion Henderson, who returned from injury and had 162 yards and a touchdown. And like usual, Marvin Harrison Jr. was great with 6 catches for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. Plus, their defense was great once again as they held Wisconsin to just 10 points and 4 yards per play. Another good game from Ohio State, and they're at number 5. Now, I could definitely understand having Ohio State higher than 5. I think they should be higher than 5, but I don't think any of the teams above them have done anything to move down, except maybe Washington, but I had Washington at number 3, so I'm not dropping them from number 3 to number 5. But Ohio State, another good win. They enter at number 5, but I definitely can understand the argument to have them higher. Number 4, we've got Florida State. They remain at 4 after a big 41-16 win over Wake Forest. Jordan Travis was great with 359 passing yards and 4 total touchdowns, 3 passing, 1 rushing. And star wide receiver Keon Coleman had another great game with 2 touchdown catches. Florida State's run defense, which had been a weakness of their team so far, was great, allowing just 2.6 yards per carry. But Florida State took care of business against Wake Forest. They check in at number 4. Number 3, we've got Washington. So they entered number 3 after a 42-33 win over Stanford. That's another second straight game for Washington where they played a bad Pac-12 team and ended up being a pretty close game after last week they beat Arizona 15-7. But this game was better for Washington, especially offensively. They had a huge bounce-back offensive game. Michael Penix Jr. threw for 369 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, he did throw an interception, making it 3 straight games with a pick, and he does need to cut down on those. But overall, the offense was a lot better for Washington. It looked a lot more like the Washington offense we're used to, and not putting up 15 points against Arizona State. Now, defensively for Washington, it was not good, allowing 33 points to a bad Stanford team. So Washington does need to figure things out defensively. But earlier this season, their defense ended up playing well. So I definitely think they can regain that defensive form and have a solid defense. But it's a good thing Washington can figure things out offensively because they have a tough 4-game stretch to end the season as they go to USC next week, then they're home against Utah, then out at Oregon State, and then home against Washington State, and then most likely Pac-12 championship game against another really tough opponent. So Washington gets the win over Stanford. It's their first 8-0 start since 2016 when they made the college football playoff, and they entered number 3. Coming in at number 2, we've got Michigan. They remained at 2. They did not play, and they were on a bye. But now, with the sign stealing situation around Michigan at the moment, I wonder how good Michigan actually is, because they've gotten to this point of the season by stealing signs. So, how good is Michigan really? But after their bye week, they enter number 2, but it's going to be interesting to see once they actually start to play teams like Penn State and Ohio State, if they're able to still be as good as they were. And coming in at number 1, we've got Georgia. They remain at 1 after a big win over their rival Florida, winning 43-20. They had no Brock Bowers offensively, no problem. Ladd McConkey stepped up with 135 yards and a touchdown, and Georgia also ran for 3 scores. Georgia easily beat their rival Florida. I still think Georgia's going to lose, and I still think they're not quite as good as some people think they are, but until they lose, they're going to be at number 1. And my updated college ball playoff predictions. Just one small change, that is swapping Michigan and Ohio State. So my updated playoff predictions: 1, Washington, undefeated Pac-12 champion; 2, Ohio State instead of Michigan; 3 is Florida State; and 4 is Georgia. And I know the college ball playoff committee's rankings come out on Tuesday, and these are not my predictions for what the playoff rankings will look like. This is my predictions for what the playoff will look like at the end of the season. But I will have a different video coming out in the next day or so about my predictions for what the college ball playoff committee's rankings will look like when they come out on Tuesday. But those are my Week 10 college football rankings. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, turn notifications so I do my best to post as often as possible. Let me know in the comments if you agree with my rankings, disagree, and why. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But thank you for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, turn notifications so I do my best to post as often as possible. And I will see you in the next video.